So let's talk about Kendrick Lamar because we had him as one of the biggest winners of the Grammys. Does like has a sweep. He is getting like all of these crazy things happen to him. First of all, we just have this like beef that started. Like Kendrick Lamar somehow ignited the hip hop world. Like have you seen a beef like this in the hip hop world in your lifetime that has totally sparked this like craziness that has just gone viral virtually? It's everywhere.
I mean, to answer that question, no, because things haven't been able to go viral in the way that they can in
Mm,
2024, 2025. Like, just with all of the different channels that we have through social media, like, something can go like that and catch virality, even in a way that it couldn't do it even 5 years ago, especially not 10 years ago. But I guess technically in my lifetime, like, there was the Jay-Z Nas beef,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
don't remember it.
yeah,
So I'm not gonna say yes, but no, there's been nothing like it in my lifetime, at least that I can remember.
yeah. In your like hip hop listening lifetime, I guess would be a better question
Right.
then. Yeah,
Yeah. No,
because like
nothing
yeah,
like it.
yeah, it is so crazy and like this like started something that yeah it was some tracks back and forth, but really what it did it almost brought like this insane like this hip hop's a very popular genre, but it almost just like brought even more popularity to the genre.
It
More
did,
and
yeah.
like so many more people were aware of like what's going on. Like my wife, who never listens to hip hop, like really does not like hip hop to the point of like being annoyed if I even have a song like playing. If like she's out somewhere and I put a song on, she comes in, she's like, oh, "What are you listening to?" Like, but she was like, "Oh, like this isn't this crazy?" Like
Yeah. It
Kendrick and
transcended the
Drake.
genre for
Oh,
sure. It did.
absolutely. So much. Yeah.
And you know
Yeah.
what it's like? This is why I love hip hop, is because I also love sports. Hip hop
Mm,
is a sport
yeah.
more than
Yeah.
any other genre in music is.
Absolutely.
And so it's very competitive, and it comes and goes in waves, this level of competitiveness.
Yeah.
And so what it's like is, let's say 2016, we've got the
Mm,
Warriors and the Cavs.
mhm.
Everybody knows about that series.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that the Warriors had maybe the best regular season of all time,
Yeah.
and that they were winning. They were up
Yeah.
3-1, and
Yeah.
LeBron did what nobody else had ever done
Mm,
before, because
mm,
LeBron is also one of the best.
yeah.
That is
Yeah.
what you can equate this year to. We have
Yeah.
Drake, who is the biggest streaming artist
Mhm.
of all time, debatable with a couple other artists. At least in hip
Yeah.
hop, he is.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
so you can debate, this is like Drake's regular season, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's putting up the most numbers. The Warriors
Yeah.
put up what, 73 wins, 72?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that. Drake's putting up 72, 73 wins in the regular season, but Kendrick is the one that has the competitive juice to
Mhm.
extinguish that fire when it really counts in the playoffs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he puts out this verse on Like That, just ignites the world on fire.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Ignites the
Yeah.
world on fire. And the only thing that it can be compared to was back in like 2012 or 2013 when when he put out the Control verse that
Mm, yeah.
also reignited that competitive fire in hip hop, where you had rappers that you don't even remember nowadays
Mhm.
coming
Yeah.
out of the woodworks taking shots at Kendrick.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's similar,
Totally.
but it's on an even bigger scale, because this
Yeah.
time Kendrick decided to take on the 2016 Warriors. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it transcends genre, it transcends everything. It is
Mm,
a pop culture moment.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And he then on top of like blowing this up, he then has this insane back and forth, which like so like some of the tracks are like meh, like some of the stuff that Drake does, even maybe one or two of Kendrick's tracks are kind of like but then he ends it with the ultimate track that he wins. How he won 5 Grammys? Was that
Five
it?
Grammys,
5 Grammys
clean
for,
sweep.
which is so insane. And And then on top of that, like there's no response from Drake to that last song, or at least nothing
Yeah.
like. nothing really that legitimate. Like, yeah, there's some talking or like, you know what I mean? But there's nothing, there's no response, which, to be honest, there was a point where I was like, even though I knew that like Kendrick didn't really like Drake, like I knew that there was like that tension there. There was a point where I was like, is this like just a big publicity stunt? Like just because of how much it like blew up and like, but then like as each track went back and forth and it got more and more serious, I was like, yeah, this is not like, you can't be calling somebody a pedophile and that be like, it was just a publicity thing. Like this was just to bolster both of our streams. Yeah, exactly. So
it like it got dark pretty quickly.
Really
it got
quickly.
dark.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it turned into not Kendrick versus Drake, but Kendrick using Drake as an archetype, and instead it became the culture versus everybody else.
Yeah.
Whether you want to deem that LA culture, Compton culture, or hip hop culture.
Yeah.
Kendrick was defending his culture, you know? And so it became culture versus culture vulture, technically.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's just when it turned dark, when he's like, you know what, this isn't even about really you anymore. I obviously don't like you, but it's more about you and everybody like you that I'm taking on right now. Like, it ain't a 20v1, it's a 1v20.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, it was just so intense. And then like, so you get all of this happening and then there's like quite a bit of silence for a while where like people are like, what's going to happen? There's all these rumors like Drake's got an album coming and like Kendrick's got something in the barrel, like ready to unload. Like there was all this like, for a while, there was all this kind of tension. And then it kind of like everybody like culture does and like people do. I don't think people forgot about it as much as they just like kind of weren't aware of that being on the radar anymore. Like it was really just like the really intense hip hop fans that were still kind of like, oh, but there's something brewing.
Yeah, we're like, wait,
but like
there's more.
most of the people were like, I guess this is over. It feels unresolved. I guess Kendrick won. Like, I don't know. And then he gets all these nominations. Wait, when did the Grammy nominations come out before? They would have come out before his album, right? He dropped the album. He got nominated for all these things, and then he dropped his album.
Yeah, I think nominations are usually like October.
That's what I thought.
Right? And that album
was
November, if I remember right.
Yeah, mid-November.
Which, one thing I will say, this is a reason why I love Kendrick. Not Like Us was not on the album, right?
Yeah.
He could have put that on the album, and it would have been the number one album on the charts for, what, 4 months? Like,
yeah, seriously.
It would have, I mean, at least the hip-hop charts, it would have been number one for a long time because people were just streaming the heck out of that song.
Yeah,
But he never sacrifices anything over the integrity of his album. I love that. Yeah. Especially because that song actually would have fit on the album, you know, with the West Coast hip-hop style themes.
Totally. Yeah.
It would have fit, but
yeah, I
don't know. He just said, I don't want it on the album, so I'm not going to put it there. That's cool, man. That's just...
Yeah, well, and
cool.
Like, it's... Yeah, I think he just is like, this was a moment in time. I just want it to stand alone. I don't want it to be on this album. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's a super cool thing to do. You can tell that it wasn't just about, getting the streams on the album, which, like you said, he could have just, like, had that album pop off like crazy. And then around that time, and maybe it was before that time, the timeline to me is murky, but he gets announced to be playing the Super Bowl, which is massive.
Around that time too.
And like, there's all kinds of drama with like Lil Wayne and like, just, there's all kinds of drama, which there's always all kinds of drama when whoever's playing for the Super Bowl gets announced. But like, huge, he gets to play. He's announced to be in this, like, playing the Super Bowl halftime show, and then he announces a massive tour with SZA, which is like probably, I don't know, I didn't look this up, which maybe I should have, but it feels like, has he done a stadium tour like this before? I feel like this is one of his biggest
Mr.
tours.
Morale was...
That was a big one?
I mean, I would assume it was a stadium. I saw it at the Delta Center,
Okay.
which holds like, I don't know, 20,000
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
It felt like that was a big tour.
A big
I mean,
tour. Yeah.
it was him and Baby Keem.
Yeah. That's pretty
Baby
big.
Keem's not as big as SZA, and SZA will pull a different kind of
Crowd
crowd too.
Yeah.
So
Totally. Yeah.
obviously it's gonna be bigger, but
Yeah.
that felt pretty big. But
Yeah.
I don't think he toured for To Pimp a Butterfly, really, did he? And I don't really remember Damn either.
Yeah.
Oh no, he did tour for Damn.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I didn't go,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
But this is a huge tour. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like kind of pairing up with like a very huge artist that, like you said, to a degree represents a different demographic than he would necessarily pull from. So this is like massive. And then on top of all this, after he like now that he's got this album out, this album is for sure going to be all over the Grammys next year.
Yeah.
So we've got we have Kendrick Lamar, like 2 full years, maybe even a little bit more of that, of just like Kendrick Lamar. And is this like one of, because I think a lot of people thought Kendrick is done. He's washed. He's over. After Mr. Morale, and he kind of quieted for a while, I think people were, even though his fans were like, no, this is what he does. He just kind of sleeps for a little bit, and then all of a sudden he puts out this massive thing. But this is different. This is different than him just like putting out a huge album like he's done in the past. This is like him. I don't know if after like he realized what happened with this whole beef thing with Drake, I don't know if this was him just being like, I'm gonna just like push this to the moon. But
yeah, you know what it feels like? It feels like 2024 was his how do you say that? Like, it was like the last push to add to his resume to present to everybody and say, I'm the greatest hip hop artist that ever lived.
Yeah.
This is what I did. Like, you've seen what I've done in the past. Good Kid, Mad City is like the longest charting hip hop album in history. To Pimp a Butterfly is critically acclaimed as maybe, if not, one of the best albums of all time, all genres.
Yeah.
Damn put up crazy numbers commercially and won a Pulitzer Prize. Mr. Morale was my little baby showing you what goes on in my head.
Super personal, yeah.
And now I just buried the biggest rapper alive.
Yeah.
Did the Super Bowl, did a world tour, won all these Grammys. Like, this is what I've done. Take it or leave it. I'm the best hip hop artist that ever lived. That's kind of what it feels like to me.
Yeah. Like, absolutely. It almost like, if we can go back to a sports analogy, you were talking about LeBron versus the Warriors. It's almost like if this would be like if LeBron, when he went to the Lakers, he won 3 championships and was averaging 45 points a game.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like if that had happened, because like it does feel like he is pushing himself to the point, and like obviously not all of this is like his own credit. Like you can't just make something go, well, I guess if you have enough money you could probably make something go viral, but I don't think he made that stuff go viral. It did, like it was organic in a lot of ways, but then he just kept piling on top of all of that, just continuing this kind of climb to the point where I think that he's kind of made it nearly impossible for anybody to say, no, like Kendrick's not the best.
I kind of agree. Like, because let's talk about this really quickly.
Yeah, sure.
These are the artists that you will hear in that conversation, right? You will hear Nas because he put out Illmatic.
Yeah.
Maybe the greatest hip hop album of all time. Okay, well, Kendrick put out To Pimp a Butterfly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You hear Jay-Z. He had longevity in the game. He put out a bunch of great albums. Okay, well, so did Kendrick. Kendrick hasn't missed yet. Jay-Z has misses. We're not going to talk about that right now, though. Yeah. Or you hear Kanye West.
Yeah.
Which, that's debatable to me.
Yeah.
I mean, Kanye has done a lot for hip-hop. He has changed the soundscape of hip-hop twice. And he has My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy to put up against Illmatic and Butterfly to me. But I don't know. I agree. It's hard to just say, like, how can you argue Kendrick not being the greatest now? I don't know.
Yeah, because he like, and each artist has their own style. Like you could argue maybe with Kanye that like the things that he did were more influential on a producer level than they were
Yeah,
influential
absolutely.
anywhere else. Whereas Kendrick, you could argue he was more influential, like lyrically, with his
Culturally, too.
culturally
Uh,
for sure. Yeah,
I mean, let's not forget, like, the Black Lives Matter movement was built on all right. You
seriously.
know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's nothing to turn your
yeah,
nose at. But
yeah,
Kanye changed the soundscape of hip hop with 808s and
absolutely.
Heartbreak and
Yeah,
Yeezus. And
yeah,
let's not forget that before the College Dropout came out, I mean, it was pretty much gangster rap. And
was. Yeah,
Kanye
yeah,
kind of turned it into backpack rap, talking
yeah,
about things that, whatever he wanted to.
yeah, yeah.
And it kind of was epitomized, cemented when Graduation beat out 50 Cent's album,
Mhm.
when they were going up against each other.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
I mean, the influence, you can't really argue.
yeah,
I think Kanye has
absolutely.
Kendrick there, but
Yeah,
Kendrick
when you're
has
talking
Kanye in
about
almost everything
shaping,
else.
yeah, when you're
Who has
talking
a
about
stronger
shaping,
discography?
oh, I would say Kendrick, just because like when you look at some of Kanye's, like Kanye has some misses, or at least if you're a really 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 intense fan of Kanye, half misses.
Let me phrase it this way. One artist, this sounds like I'm on Twitter just making up something so stupid, but what keep one artist and their discography
Mm,
and the rest goes away forever. Like, who, if you can only listen
mm.
to Kanye's music for the rest of your life, you can only listen to Kendrick's music the rest of your life. Are you taking the blue pill, the red pill? You know what I mean?
For me, it would be Kendrick. I gravitate much more toward his like tendency to enjoy, especially with To Pimp a Butterfly, like jazz rap.
Yeah.
I just loved that. I like that was one of like what I was describing earlier. Like one of the moments that I chase in music is listening to Pimp a Butterfly for the first time.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
just the feeling of that and hearing that for the first time, I chase that. And when I feel that again in other music, that's how I gauge, is that like, is this something that I think is going to be great to me? Um, I do think that Kanye has changed like hip hop in a crazy way, but I think that the only thing to me is that his music hasn't aged as well. Because when you typically do the changing, the music after you changes, like, even though you're the one that did the changing, the music after is so much better. Like, because it's not like you're going back to gangster rap, which is a total different thing. Kanye is this bridge from gangster to what we have now. And
Yeah.
so, like, to me, a lot of what I hear from Kanye, other than Yeezus and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, I like those two albums. I love those albums. But when I hear like 808s and Heartbreak, when I hear Graduation, to me, it feels like the production side hasn't aged well, even though I can acknowledge that those are monumental pieces of work that has shaped hip hop. To me, I'm like, I don't go back to those albums a lot because I don't love the sounds sonically anymore that those albums represent. Whereas, you know, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, I'd listen to that all the time because I love that dark. I love his dark sound that he has there, aggression, especially in that. I loved how he teamed up with Bon Iver and did some
Yeah.
just amazing stuff on that album. Like there's some great stuff there, but I would probably have to say Kendrick just because I feel like his stuff hasn't done that to me. It doesn't feel like, oh, this hasn't aged super well. I'm not into this as much anymore. I feel like I could listen to any of his albums and be like, I love this, and I'll eat it up forever. So it's one of those things that's really hard because I think it comes down to like, what artist did you have like the best moment with? Like usually that's what it comes down to. And if
Yeah.
you had a better
That's
moment
true.
with Kanye, then you're probably like, just because you have the nostalgia of that and you just have the love
Yeah.
for that, you're probably always going to say Kanye. If you had the better moment with Kendrick, you're probably always going to say Kendrick. And to me, I had that better moment with specifically To Pimp a Butterfly. But
Yeah, that makes
that's
sense.
just me. But for you, would you lean more toward Kanye? You would
I think I
keep,
would, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
I
that's
think,
fair. I understand it. I get it.
not to mention just the sheer volume,
Yeah.
honestly. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
he
Yeah,
has so many
yeah.
different sounds.
He
Because for
does,
me,
for sure.
I think Graduation has aged well,
Mm-hmm.
contrary to what you think. I
Yeah.
think 808s has aged perfectly. I think if 808s
Mm-hmm.
dropped in 2025, it would still sound fresh. It would be cool. But those aren't even my favorites. Like you, I
Yeah.
love Yeezus. Yeezus is
Yeah.
probably my favorite album of all time. I
Mm-hmm.
love Twisted Fantasy. I think College Dropout and Late Registration are timeless. I don't think
I would agree with those.
they will ever go
Yeah.
out of style.
Yeah.
And then it gets a little murkier from there. But
Yeah.
like that enough,
Yeah.
that alone
That's
is
a
enough
lot.
for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's so much. And then not to mention, like, yeah, there's bangers on everything else. But
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. He knows how to make great tracks even in the albums where you're like, what's he doing? Like what's going on here?
yeah,
And I do wonder if that's kind of the curse that he's living right now, is like he has everything that he's ever made. You think of his shoes, his fashion have been big changes, big
yeah,
shifts. So the pressure that would come with, now I have to continue to be a change maker. And I think that's what's happening right now
yeah.
in his life, specifically, if I could clinically diagnose him.
I
But
agree with you.
I think he's trying too hard to continue to be a change maker. And my thought, like, I think the ability is there to be a change maker, but changing something, a lot of that is the right place at the right time. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
he was at the right moment in the right time of history where rap was everything. Like, and it even goes back to when he was producing on Jay-Z's albums, like before he put anything out.
Right.
Like there's a lot of, like, he was just in the right moment. Hip hop was ready for a change. He was there, and he was
Yeah.
the change maker at that point. Similar to when he enters the shoe scene, when he enters the fashion scene, there was a change ready to happen. And then, but I think right now he's like, but this is who I am. I'm a change maker. So
Yeah.
now I have to do something. And it's almost like it's driving him insane that he can't
It
easily
will.
change.
I mean, not everything that you do can be
Yeah.
so elite, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're not always inventing the iPhone. Sometimes you need to just give us the next model that runs a little faster and has a better camera. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
we don't need a whole
exactly.
different phone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which I,
Yeah.
not to go off, this is a total tangent. I'm sorry, I've driven this podcast literally off a
Hey,
cliff here.
that's totally fine.
But
I like this.
I'm excited for Bully because all the clips I'm hearing are Chipmunk soul samples that he has chopped up himself. And in that interview with Justin LeBoy, he said the difference between what I'm doing right now and what I did on Vultures is I'm chopping up the samples myself. Like, I'm doing it all.
Yeah.
That's what I want. Give me that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing, he's a wild card. I think even though in the last several releases I'm kind of like, I don't think this is going to be good, and then it ends up not being that good. He's still that wild card, to go back to sports, like a Steph Curry, that you're like, even though the team's not good, you can't count them out in the playoffs, because if Steph goes for 40, so it's like, it's the same thing with Kanye. You're like, I think he's done, but at the same time, I'm going to have to still pay attention to him, because he could just pull something out and it be totally amazing and be, cutting edge again. But I think my hopes probably are a lot less than yours at this point.
Well, I'm a delusional Kanye fan. But we need to remember, we are not that far removed from literal genius. 3 years ago, technically 4 years ago now, we got Donda, which is like the best rollout in, I don't know, finish that sentence however you want. 20
Yeah.
years ever? I don't
Yeah.
know. Like,
Yeah.
he was selling out arenas to just as listening parties. And that whole era was iconic. And yes, the album is bloated, but like you were saying, you never know if Steph's going to go for 40. And we got Life of the Party. We got Come to Life. We got Off the Grid. We got Praise God. But we also got Television and all those other ones. You know what I mean? Like, which I'm fine with. At this point in Kanye's career, if even half of that album is awesome, I am a very happy Kanye West fan.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what, like, when you're a fan of somebody as they continue in their career, like, how much can you expect for them to have, like, huge albums after huge albums? Like, even thinking of Kendrick, like, I guess this is a question to ask, and this is kind of off the cuff, but like, where would you put GNX in his discography? Like, I will definitely would put it for sure below To Pimp a Butterfly and Good Kid, Mad City. Absolutely. I didn't like it as much as Mr. Morale personally. So like, I don't know, like, how much can you expect somebody to, your hopes are always as high as their best product, but how many times can you expect them to continue to one up themselves?
And that's why we're even having this conversation, because Kendrick and Kanye are the anomalies. That's not normal in hip hop.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not normal to have To Pimp a Butterfly, Good Kid, Mad City, Damn, GNX, Mr. Morale. It's not normal to have Twisted Fantasy, Yeezus, College Dropout, Graduate. It's not normal, and that's why they are in the conversation for the best ever. And personally, Good Kid, Mad City is my favorite because of, like what you said, 2012. I don't know how old I was. I was probably like a junior in high school or something. I was in high school. Yeah. So when that album came out, like, that was, I remember, like, the first time where I was like, hold up, like, this is a story. Like, this whole, like, this goes together. This isn't like just a playlist album, like, this is what an album can be. And so for me, I have that feeling with Kendrick where it was kind of, it just impressed me a lot when I was younger.
Yeah.
And so totally. I was ready for To Pimp a Butterfly, and he exceeded my expectations there too. So I would have those two at the top. I would go actually Damn third.
Yeah. I can see that.
I love Damn.
Damn was really good. I just think the emotional connection I had with Mr. Morale was stronger, and I think that's why I go back to it.
That's very fair, and I agree. I had a more emotional connection with Mr. Morale too. But one of my favorite things in music is when an artist like Kendrick or Kanye of that level of popularity is able to walk the very, very thin line of commercial success, but also there's a whole lot to dig into as a music nerd.
Yeah, definitely.
Where there's a lot of depth to it, where Kanye and Kendrick are both phenomenal at doing that. And Damn is the perfect example of that, because I would assume it's maybe Kendrick's most commercially successful album. Maybe Good Kid, Mad City would have a word with that.
I think Damn would be.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
But it also won a Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So crazy.
So it's like, that's
so crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I probably would go GNX there, then Mr. Morale, just because I'm going to revisit GNX more.
Yeah. It's Mr. Morale is still.
Mr. Morale is hard to listen to, not because it's bad. It's just hard to listen to because you are, each time you put that thing on, like, you can only listen to the entire album. You can't just pick and choose a few songs here and there, because you've got to finish that thing, and you are going on that therapy journey with Kendrick. And I mean, I'm not trying to cry every single day, so I'm going to listen to GNX more. You know, so that's how my ranking would go. And then put whatever you want next, probably Section 80, and then Overly Dedicated, then Black Panther probably. And then, well, no, Untitled and Masters got to go in there somewhere. But, after that, it's all...
Yeah, no,
we're splitting hairs here.
Around. Yeah.
We're splitting hairs.
Yeah, it's true. Well, man, I just think we're witnessing something that, like, probably won't ever happen again with Kendrick. It's like, we're witnessing something that won't happen again ever. And I don't mean with Kendrick, I just mean with anybody. Like, I feel like this is just like the most insane, just events to snowball on top of each other, and just continue to get massive and massive. And like, yeah, who knows what next year's Grammys are going to look like, because he's going to have a full album
It's gonna be fun
for
Yeah.
nominations. And so like it could just be a total, yeah, it could just be amazing, right?
Thank you so
And-
much for tying this back to the Grammys so that
Yeah.
it looks like we are like following
I know,
our outline
yeah.
on this podcast.
Oh yeah, we know what we're doing. We know
Thank
what
you
we're
so
doing.
much. What I will say is we're never going to get another Kendrick. We're never going to get another Kanye.
Mhm.
But we may get these interspersions. Is that a word?
Mm. We'll make it a word.
We may get some artists interspersed throughout
Yes.
that fall into this category of Tyler, the Creator,
Mm.
of Jid, of Baby Keem, kind of these archetypes that in their own rights are incredibly creative. They're forming these storylines throughout their albums. They're making these different eras. Tyler specifically is a great example of this, where he is not Kanye, he is not Kendrick, he's totally himself. He's very authentic. And he's not on that same tier for me. I love Tyler, the Creator. He's not on that same tier of like these guys are like the hip hop gods, Kanye and Kendrick. And then right underneath there, that's where like someone where Tyler, the Creator could fit. And I think we will get more similar to that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hip hop's in a good place, and I'm very hopeful for what's in the future.
Yeah. This is a total sidebar, but do you think like Tyler, the Creator, like birthed meme rappers in the sense that like he was kind of the first
he was
just like outrageously funny and ridiculous rapper that like hit mainstream. And then
I think it's him and Childish Gambino that
that's true.
kind of headed that.
It's true. Yeah, Childish Gambino, absolutely. Like his whole career was basically just started as like almost like a spoof. It felt like.
But what's phenomenal, like you can just see the genius behind those guys, because as their career has evolved, like they are giving us albums that are on par with some of those Kendrick and Kanye albums.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
In terms of creativity, execution, production, vocals, everything. Like they've got some 10 out of 10s, and it's impressive to see where they started and where they ended. I love a good artist evolution arc.